come back to here. Here we go. We're live on Facebook. Cool, perfect. All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to another week's chat with some of our contacts in the game. We're fortunate enough today to have my friend Steve Birchmore, whose CV is as long as my arm. He's been head coach and head of recruitment at various clubs at Millwall, Liverpool, Fulham, Reading, Watford, and now he's involved at Kin Partners, which is involved with some of the biggest names in the globe, to be honest. So Steve's going to take us through a bit about his journey and what he's doing now. So welcome, Steve. How are you, mate?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. We're just talking off air about technical stuff. We'll keep to the football side of things for this chat, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's one part of the team I need to get involved in just to see, make it a little bit more professional. So first, Steve, we talked about how you were going to start this, and we mentioned about you were Tottenham when you were younger. Well, we're going to kind of skip your younger years of your own football days, and we're going to start. How did you initially kind of get into football when you're in your
professional side?
Your role. Tell us what your role is at the moment, and then we'll go back and start.
Yeah, my role now is I work for Kin Partners. We're an agency, but we also specialise on the commercial side as well. So we deal for probably the top players in the world. Obviously, arguably the highest ranked player in the world on most people's lips is Lionel Messi. And we're in partnership with Lionel Messi and his father. And in Europe, our partner in Europe is called Kin 10, and it's headed by the Messi family. But we don't stop there. We've got we do all the commercial for Neymar. We've done work with Mbappe. Our brand built the brand of David Beckham. You know, he's massive now, probably generates more money, and he ain't played for 20 years than most players. So, yeah, you know, we do Gundogan at Man City and various other players. So, yeah, the real top superstars. And my job basically is to find the next Messi, which we think we found in Atsu Fatsu at Barcelona. He's probably touted now as the next big thing. I don't know if your viewers know much about him, but he's been in the British press a lot lately. He's only 17. He's already in Barcelona's first team. Yeah. There's been bids of 150 million or 200 million, or according to whatever paper you read. So it's not only those players, though. We do sort of, you know, looking players to play in the Premiership. You know, we got the England captain, a lot of players at Chelsea and Spurs and Arsenal and such like. So, yeah, and Man City and places like that. So it's finding the stars is basically what I'm doing. And it's not just in England now. I get probably 10 videos a day to watch this boy from Spain or Paraguay or anywhere in the world. You know, the game's got smaller. You know, makes it much harder for the young boys growing up, because when we played and when you played, you'd have to be the best in your area to get in your local teams, and now to get in the Premiership, you've probably got to be one of the best in the world in your position just to get in there. So it's a hard journey for kids to break through now. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. So great start with what Steve's doing at the moment. I'm sure we'll touch on some stories about them mega stars that everyone talks about. But obviously, from your first time in football, let's take it back now, because what I feel is really important for the kids to understand that most people want to be a professional footballer, but there's so many different routes into football, and I want to talk about your journey and how you kind of carved a career to where you've got now, because it's as we all know in the professional game, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of graft over many years to what people see where you are now or where I was a few years back. So how did you first get involved? And we're going to also talk about some tips of your own, what you feel at different clubs the kids need to focus on in their development, and what you looked at and what you identified talent as as in yourself, and that's obviously one of your skill sets. And so, how did you first get into professional football, and what club was that?
Well, I was at non-league with Fisher, and Andy Messi and myself were doing the reserves there, and Dave Mehmet was there, and I don't know, money was tight at Fisher, and a lot of it goes to Andy Messi, to be fair, because Andy Messi went to Millwall, and then Dave went to Millwall, and Andy sort of said, "I'll get Birch in scouting," and I hadn't really done scouting before. I knew about football, you know, everybody, but I sort of got dropped in at the in the deep end, really.
Yeah.
I went to Millwall. Obviously, you've played at Millwall, so you know money wasn't paramount. You know, they couldn't splash out against. Because when I started in the academies, it was a bit different then. Because Arsenal were the main academy. They had the most money. They spent well, and obviously they had more scouts than everybody else.
Yeah.
And the second best team was West Ham. West Ham had a great catchment area, and they were good with kids. Now, it's probably turned on its hat now, and it's probably in London, it's definitely Chelsea and Tottenham who rule the roost in the academies. Chelsea got probably the best teams. Tottenham got loads of quality players. So it has spun round, and money plays a big part, because if you're going to buy kids, and there is a big, massive market in young boys, Man City, Chelsea are the two main ones, followed closely by Liverpool. You know, exactly the major powerhouses of football are with kids. It's not necessarily the right route to take, because a lot of these kids get lost in the system. So, yeah, so going back to it, yeah, so Mass got me in at Millwall. So basically, I really liked it, and I was really enthusiastic. And I went everywhere. And people said, "Oh, you can't do this, and you can't go to the East End." Within time, we were getting players from all over. And they used to have a thing called the Watford tournament for the very young kids, first academy level, sort of under nines. And Arsenal won it every year. So we'd been about a year in, and we got thrashed Millwall. And then I thought, I'm going to be determined. So I got all our scouts and built up the scouting network a bit. And Mem and all that, we was all out there really working hard. And we put this team together, and we went to this Watford tournament. So that was Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea, all the big boys.
Yeah.
And first game, group stage, who do we draw? Arsenal. God, think, what have we done here? And they were all big, athletic boys, even at under 9. Anyway, but we had a good side, and we ended up winning 5-1. No, yeah, 5-0. No, 5-1. And it was like this big buzz. God, how's little Millwall beat them? And we had some really good players. And we got through to the final. And who did we play in the final? Arsenal. And we beat them 5-0 in the final. And that was the first bit of success. So I really got the bug for it, and I was everywhere. And I've got a lot of old chat, and I can get in place. So to be a scout, you've got to have an eye. And luckily for me, I just had a natural eye. I could see what they would become. You know, even people who have been a lot better players than me used to say, "Flipping hell, how did you notice that? How did you notice that?" And I was just lucky. It was just a knack. And Millwall sort of rose, and we were doing well. And I'll never forget, we played we play Arsenal at under 11s. And Steve Bold, who went on to be the assistant manager last year or the year, was running their team, or overseeing it anyway. And he went, "What are we playing teams like Millwall for?" You know, basically we was the poo on their shoe. And I thought,
oh, it's funny you say that. I remember a similar comment when we played Arsenal one week, and obviously that was fuel for the fire, and we turned them over as well, just off the fact that we heard that.
Well, this actual day, we ended up getting beat about 7 or 8-1. But if people don't know about academies, they play 4 quarters, and you spread the players about a little bit. But they were massive. They were strong. They were much better than us. And when we was walking away, I heard Steve Bold say, "This is, we should change this. We should only play Tottenham and Chelsea and all that." And I thought to myself, "I'll show him." So under 11s is basically the last year in infant school. So I went out that year. I must have seen every district and school game. Anyway, we sort of got stronger and stronger, and we played them at under 12s. And Steve Bold was taking the team again, and we won 4-1. And I had the great pleasure of walking past Steve Bold and saying, "Yeah, not bad for a team that you shouldn't be playing." And they absolutely coated their players.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Oh,
and it sort of set us off.
Your video's just cut out there, mate.
It's all right. Somebody's trying to get through to me. Let me just get rid of them. You there, back? Sorry, mate.
Yeah, cool.
Sorry.
Cool, yeah. No, so some real powerful things I've took out of that is, first of all, if you said you got the bug, but obviously it showed you really loved what you did. And I think that's a real strong quality to talk about, because whatever capacity you're in life, whether you're a football player, a coach, a scout like yourself at the time, it gave you that energy to enjoy what you do and strive to be the best. So you got an early taste of that from early doors, it looks like, and you had that work rate as well to want to prove people wrong.
Yeah, and to be fair, it really goaded me as well about how arrogant they was and who they think they are, and you're like, basically, little Millwall, you shouldn't be here, and that really got up my nose. So I really wanted to do well. And
what back then? So clearly you went away and you grafted and went and kind of found these players. What I think is quite important for the kids, what were you looking for at that point? Because obviously you went from kind of getting trashed by a top academy in Arsenal to go in and, like you said, see every game in existence that season. What and then you got the proven results off the back of it. What kind of things in detail were you looking at that you found in them players that got success?
Well, I just think when at Millwall, they was, they was just local boys, and I thought, well, we're going to need to look further, still keep our core, because that's what made Millwall. Talked about Millwall because that's where we was, and they determination and grit. And then I thought, well, if we can bring some quality with that, then we'll get better quickly. So basically, I was looking for things. I was looking for things that our kids didn't have. First touch. I go offline a little bit. A few years later, I went to Liverpool, and then I got headhunted to go to Reading. And Reading were probably the top academy in the country for producing players. They probably had the best bloke I've ever worked with in football, called Eamon Dolan, who's unfortunately died early, got cancer and died. But he was probably the best football man that I spoke with. He was a good player. He's centre forward for West Ham. But he just understood, and he was intelligent. And we sat down, and I didn't realise how I'd got these players. And he wanted, I was getting lots of players there as well. And he said to me, "We need to get what you've got and put it on paper." So I didn't really understand what I had. I just went by eye. Yeah. And then basically he asked me that question you've just asked. So I said, well, it's first touch. If you ain't got a first touch, the higher you go up, the harder it is to be a footballer. You know that yourself. When you're young, you can get away with having a poor touch if you're big, strong or quick. But if you've got a bad touch, there's not many players in the Premier League that've got a bad touch, because players would just take the ball off them every time. So I looked at that. So he devised this thing called the 3 7s. So we marked people out of 10. And if you had 3 sevens in all the categories, we would sign you, because his feeling was that we can improve things, but we can't improve everything. So if you're good across the board and exceptional, say you're 7 at most, but you're getting 9s and 10s at something else, or not 10s, only Messi's and they get 10s. But,
Yeah.
you know, if you was higher scoring that, you had a chance to be a footballer.
And Steve,
So,
can I ask again, just for the kids, can you tell us again? That'd be really powerful for them to understand what we're saying and what were
yeah,
the kind of categories? Do you remember the categories that then
yeah,
the sevens were judged on, and how the
yeah, I remember categories now, because lots of clubs are using it now. Right, the 3 sevens are, the first thing is taking and dealing with the ball. So that means what your first touch is, do you get your head up and can you pass it? So taking and delivering, yeah? The
Yeah.
second, athleticism. Now, a lot of people just think athleticism's running fast, but it's not. Because, you know, if it was just that, we'd go around the athletics track and we'd just sign, you know, the best athletes. It's not that. It's, you know, how can you jump? What type of stamina have you got? Can you keep going? So all them physical attributes would be put up, because unfortunately, as football's gone on, if you're bad athletically now, it's not impossible to make a career, but it's a lot harder. So that was 2. The third category was one that's not, basically people don't even think of, and it is the hardest to define, especially from the side of a football pitch, is spirit. Now, I've seen some of the best technical players not make it, and I've seen some bang average players, but have got strong mindsets, a will to win, and a will to improve, and that comes from the spirit. And I'm sure you've seen it yourself. You know, some kids. I was watching West Ham the other day, and when I was at Reading, I bought him. We bought him into Reading, the centre forward. What's his name? Big fella. Played the other night. God, my memory's going. I've got so many players going through my head. Anyway, he played. He had a very poor first touch. Michael Antonio, very poor, very poor first touch, but was rapid, would catch pigeons, and physically you couldn't knock him off the ball. So we brought him in, even though he wasn't technically a 7.
Yeah.
But so many other attributes, we thought we could work on him. And it must have worked, because he's had a pretty good career of scoring goals in the Premier League now.
Yeah.
But he had a journey where no one would take him. He was at Tooting and Mitcham going nowhere. So his other side of it was unbelievable. His will to make a career and his spirit overrid everything. And I'm sure you've played with players that ain't the greatest technical players, but bring other things to the table.
Yeah, 100%. It's something that I try to bring into a lot of kids at the academy that I coach. The mindset is probably the foundations to it all if you want to achieve, and you've got to have that kind of hunger and, like you touched on, that will to win, and ultimately you want to be the best in every department that you can be, whether that, I don't know, whether that be something silly like delivering your papers on a newspaper round. It's just a mentality that everything you do, you want to be the best that you can be. And I think that's definitely something I try to teach. So it's great to hear it from you, and you're actually saying this is actually in the DNA of near enough every one of the Premier League academies that they look for. So that's great. Guy, just saying, if you joined us late, go on, mate.
No, go on.
I'm just saying, if you joined us late, because we've got some people joining the whole time. So we've got Steve Birchmore here, head of recruitment specialist at various clubs, Millwall, Liverpool, Fulham, Reading, Watford, and he now works at Kim Partners. So we're just talking about his early days at Millwall and his success there. And we're going to move into how he talks about how you progressed then to head of recruitment actually at Millwall, didn't you, before you then headhunted to Liverpool?
Yeah, that's an interesting story, though, because I sort of made my way up, and your name, Richard Sadlier got injured, and I think Millwall didn't want to pay him off, so they give him the job as the head of recruitment. But Richard was a great fella, and he was brilliant to work with. And so I sort of got to assistant, and then he left, and I took over full time. And you know, we was lucky enough. You're going back a long time now, 20 odd years ago, and we were selling kids for £1 million. Sold David Amu to Liverpool for £1 million, Tom Kilby for £1 million to Portsmouth, and a goalkeeper, Sam Walker, to Chelsea for £1 million. So, you know, regardless of what careers they had after it, you know, that money probably kept Millwall going at the time. And it helped me, obviously, because Liverpool took note and basically come and headhunted myself to go there. But just going back on players for a bit, like, we had like Chris Smalling, who, you know, most of your listeners will know because he played for England and Man United, and now he's in Italy. But we had Chris. I had Chris at 10 years of age, and Chris is another one. It's a bit to say this pathway. Chris was a very timid boy, great size, slim, good size, really good player at the time. He was more like a Rio Ferdinand at the time. I know he's changed a bit as time's gone on, but he was very quiet, and he had a terrible, you know, he was in a lovely family, a lovely mum and that, and then his dad got electrocuted. And from being sort of in a middle class home, you know, with money, they ended up in a 1-bedroom flat, and it was really hard, and they didn't have money to get to training. But I really believed in Chris as a player, and he was 15, and we was having to pay to get him on trains and people to pick him up, and it did get harder and harder. And then we had a different academy manager who didn't really know him so well, so basically he wanted to let him go, and I wouldn't let him go. So there was arguments galore about keeping him, and in the end, they let him go. But I sort of said, you know, we've got to retain his contract because he's going to go somewhere. And in the end, we did it for a few months, and then it fizzled out. And he was at Maidstone, and I was at Liverpool, and I was going to take him to Liverpool. And obviously, with his dad dying and his sister and that, his mum didn't want to move to Liverpool. So I made a phone call, and he went to Fulham, and the rest is sort of history on that.
Yeah.
But say, oh, was he the best player you had at Millwall? And I'd go, no. We had a boy from East London called Brett Liddy. Nobody will know about him. Kid was a character, to say the least. His dad was a football thug of years gone by, and he really was dominant on wanting to be a player. And then, unfortunately, it sounds ridiculous, but his dad was in a syndicate that won the lottery, and he got loads of money, and then basically his mind just went off football. But he was left footer, but he could right foot. He was unbelievable, but he just didn't have that mindset to make it. And I think circumstances didn't help him, because once his dad got the money, he weren't pushing him as much. Because people all go about pushy dads and they're not good for the kids. But unfortunately, I'd have to disagree, because a lot of the pushy dads are the ones that got the kids into the right mindsets to make it as a footballer. Don't get me wrong, I've seen a few kill them as well. You know, they're too critical. But, you know, it's a fine balance. But if you can get that balance where the kid gets that hunger to succeed, that's what makes it.
Yeah, I always feel it's a support mechanism. So you're supporting them, obviously get them to the training, the games and things like that, helping them realise their potential and what it takes. But it ultimately, it's got the next part has to come from them. So parents play a big part in setting up that mindset and that winning mentality. Like you said, a bit of money just best player you've ever worked with as a youngster. A bit of money come along and it completely turned his head, you know. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's great. So you're at Liverpool at the time, and I know there's various players that you kind of, and you were, what was it, first you were the head of the south of England, weren't you, first?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you moved to Europe, didn't you?
Yeah, so I got the job as like the head of the south of England, all recruiting. And then I started doing a bit in Europe. And we had centres at the time. And I ran a
Got a
centre.
bit of a bad, yeah, mate.
Sorry, Mark, missed that. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
I think it's just the internet keeps them kind of
Juttering.
out or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had centres as well going. And and then I started doing more and more in Europe and doing the European thing. But, you know, the best player, young player at the time when I went to Liverpool was only a 13-year-old. And I insisted Liverpool went for him, but they couldn't because he was too young legally. But that happened to be Raheem Sterling. So
Oh, wow.
that turned out quite well.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Everybody knows what career he had. And, you know, we spotted John Joe Shelby was at Charlton. And so we put him in the frame. So, yeah, it was a successful time at Liverpool. But the only problem at Liverpool is that, one, it is very hard to break through to the first team. Very hard. You know, a lot of these kids would like, oh, yeah, I want to go to Chelsea and Arsenal. And I can understand that. But sometimes it's better to be at a smaller club where you can progress and you can get in the first team. Because at the end of the day, if a club buys you, you're much more of a commodity than a young player coming through the academy, unfortunately. At smaller clubs, that's not such a discrepancy, but at bigger clubs, it sure is. So I was going all over Europe, and I had a young family at the time, and it just become, you know, nigh on impossible to be away because I'd be on a plane, go to Romania for 5 days, come back, or I'd be at the airport coming back. I go, oh no, you've got to go to Istanbul. And, you know, I basically was never home. So lucky enough, Reading come in and they headhunted me and offered me really good money at the time. So I thought, you know, it's closer to home. The academy's better. I can get kids through there. So that's what I decided would be the best thing to do.
Perfect.
You know, it might not have been the best career move at the time, but sometimes, you know, your family comes first.
Yeah, and then obviously Reading, a hugely successful club many years ago to get itself a very strong championship team. Obviously got to the Premier League, and for the people that know that the academy's been a strong, very strong academy for years, and the coaching staff. And now I know Arsenal have kind of just headhunted a load of their academy staff.
Yeah. Lee, who's sort of head of it all now on the academy side, was at Reading with myself. But it was basically formed on the academy run that club. Eamon Dolan was the driving force. And, you know, they got a board up there with names year on year of people that made their first team debut. And, you know, I've still got players there who are still in the first team. Omar Richards. He's another great case in point. He was at Fulham. Fulham headhunted me and I went to Fulham. But then I went back to Reading after that. And he was a player at Fulham. Tiny. He was knee-high to a grasshopper, but had real ability. And Fulham let him go. So I took him to Reading. And Reading didn't want to give him a scholarship because he was too small. But I wouldn't give up on him, and the kid wouldn't give up. And he went to exit trials. Nobody took him. And then I bought him back in the summer, and he didn't have a contract. And I fought for him to get a contract, and now he's in the first team. So I persevered with him, but he persevered because he could have easily gone, oh, knockback after knockback, enough's enough. But, he's a regular Championship player now.
Yeah, that's another good example that it's that mindset again, and never give up. You get knocked back from many clubs or many challenges in your life, but it's how you react to that and actually use that as strength to then go on. There's so many players in a professional game who've been not let go. You talked about De Bruyne, didn't really work out for him at Chelsea, but then went obviously to Wolfsburg and then got bought for mega money with Man City because he wanted to play. He knew his own talent. It wasn't the right setting at the time at Chelsea, but looking at Man City now, he's one of the most in-demand midfielders in the game. So that can happen at any level, any league, any position, but you just got to keep on going and believe in yourself, even if, like you said, Mikel Arteta, the guy at West Ham who was at Tuchel mission going nowhere, and Antonio, it can happen to so many players, and there's numerous stories out there. So you've got to adopt that right mindset and just keep on going to what you want to achieve.
Totally. Because you've got to put in your mind, football is a game of opinions, and people are going to have different opinions of you, and you've just got to prove them wrong. You mentioned De Bruyne, but Salah didn't even make it at Chelsea.
Yeah,
and he's probably, De Bruyne and Salah are probably arguably two of the top players in the Premier League. Well, definitely in everybody's argument, anyway.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Just for the guys who are watching on Facebook now, if there's any questions you want to chuck over to Steve, I'm more than happy to ask them if they're on topic. So feel free to chuck them in the comments here, and I'm sure Steve will be happy. So obviously you talked about Reading there, and can we talk a bit about you're kind of the guy that you worked alongside who passed away. What kind of qualities do you think he had that you really respect? Because you talk about him being a real big impact on your career and your life. What were them admirable qualities that he showed that you've now taken on in his memory?
Well, Eamon was a lunatic, but in a lovely way. He always wanted a laugh and a joke, but the man was a workaholic. I'd get calls at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I said, "Well, you just come out of the pub?" He went, "No, I'm in the office." I go, "Get home, you lunatic! What are you doing?" But he was just so driven, and Reading was in the Premier League, and he was the caretaker manager, and he went, "Steve, come, we're going." He said, "I'm the manager." He said, "And we're going to have a glass of red wine with Ferguson after the game." And he was like a little kid. He was the manager of the first team, but he was like a little kid. We're at Old Trafford, and he's like, well, he'd won the lottery that day. But he had a great mind for football. He had a great opinion on the footballer. He could see, but he would make sure they had work ethic. He was the academy manager, but he'd done more for the first team. He'd be there with the first team players, and he'd go, "I'll come in the games room," and he'd have a game of snooker with them. Mind you, if you got in there, you never got out because you'd be in there all day. But he would talk to the first team players who weren't doing so well that could. And he, like, Guzarson, who's at Everton now, was a timid little boy, and Eamon sort of made him into a man. And I'm sure if you got him on an interview and you mentioned Eamon Dolan, he would say how much, well, I know because I've seen interviews with him, he would tell you how much this man done for his career. Not just on a football side, but also on a personal level. He just drove you forward. And when you've got that in your camp, it's like being in a team, and you've got like a winner in your team, like Erlock and that, who's diving in at people. It just brings everybody up. So if you've got leaders around you, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. From your side of the recruitment, you touched on something there, some of the qualities that he had. Has the kind of recruitment side of things, do you feel that personal touch now? Because the game, football, when I obviously first got into it, when you got into it, was very old school, very one way or no way. Nowadays, I feel that the game has evolved a little bit for the better, where people are taken as individuals. Has that influenced your job and the way you recruit? And because I know that as a scout and a recruitment, you're quite personable anyway, aren't you? Like you touched on, you know the families, you follow
Yeah.
people's journeys, and you, even though all these players are moved on to different clubs that you've grown up with, you still know them personally, still talk to them. So that's very personal. But do you think that's helped the game?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, once you go back at Millwall, it was, you've done this, you do this, you do this. There was no sort of reasoning with people, and they had no flexibility. That you've definitely got more say now, and things are not so regimented. I mean, I'll go back years ago where a player done say it wrong, a young player get a belt round the ear roll. You couldn't do that now. You know, there's, you know, it's so politically correct football. You couldn't do anything wrong these days. But kids do have a say. The only backward thing in scouting that I think is clubs now do a lot on computers, and it's a lot on stats. Now, which, don't get me wrong, they can help you, but if you just rely on stats, you're not going to get anywhere, in my opinion. You know, what you see is not always a stat. I mean, if you read Opta Index and, you know, touches of the ball and goal line shots and things like that, totally ridiculous. They think a misplaced cross is a shot, don't they? So
yeah, no, I'm a big believer in stats as well, but they're very relative. So you've got to have that.
exactly.
You've got to have that eye. You've got to know the game. You've got to know what you're talking about.
They're, like you said, they're a fantastic part of it.
Yeah,
but it's not a complete and utter science. There's other things that factor into it, and human nature really factors into it a lot. You know, a lot of this conversation today has been about people's spirit in the game. And if you haven't got, you can't measure somebody's spirit in a stat.
no, 100%,
So
100%.
although I agree with you, stats do make life easier, it's not the be all. And I think a few clubs have just gone stats only. And I think there's got to be a happy medium there somewhere.
Yeah, there has, because it's exactly what you said. When I was playing, we used to, obviously as a professional, we used to go deep into stats and our own playing individual stats. And my stats used to always be through the roof on pass completions, because I had a knack of not just winning the header, I'd get the header to another player or make a tackle and it'd go to another player. But then I would argue with the statistician that my friend made a great interception, but you've counted that as a misplaced pass. Like he just saved the goal going in, but you ticked him down for a misplaced pass. I'm like, is this for real? A bit like the VAR this year actually, until they changed the rules. I've got a couple of questions in here. In Europe, so when you work in Europe, do you work differently, or is the way that kind of Europe academies and you have to look for, is there key criteria that you watch for in the UK or for different clubs or in Europe? Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, criteria is always the same. Obviously, if you're at a different club, you know, if you're a Premier League club, you're going to be looking for Premier League class players. You gone, Mark? Hello? Sorry, Mark, I don't know what happened there.
Hello, mate. I'm still here.
Can you hear me?
We cut out briefly.
Yeah, no, briefly cut out. Yeah, so obviously, if you're a Premiership club, you're looking for players that are going to play in the Premiership.
I got you.
Yeah, you know, and if you're in Spain, say you're Barcelona, you're only going to want the top players. So there is a difference there, but the criteria is the same as we spoke. You know, a bit like the 3-7s. Taking and dealing with a ball is the first thing anyone's going to look at them. Second thing, athleticism. Third thing, spirit. Not always in that order, but they are the three ingredients that a scout will look at. Me, I also look at the shape of players, how they move. Just because the game's got a lot more athletic. That doesn't mean you're going to be like rocket fast, but balance and
coordination. Yeah.
Balance and coordination is a big thing in football. You know, when I coach kids, I always get them to do balancing exercises, and a few of the dads have come up to me and said, "What you got to do this? This is not gymnastics or anything." And I'll go back to a story. In my district team, one player couldn't get in. He was a little chubby fella, and his name was Kenny Sanson. Played 90 times for England and played for Palace and Arsenal. He couldn't even get in the district side at under 11. He was a little bit chubby, and he used to live down on the Brandon estate at Walworth, and he used to run along the railings. And people go to him, "Why do you run along the railings?" He go, "To get my balance." Well, if anybody saw Kenny play later on, they would realise how he changed athletically into the chubby little boy he was and to this athlete. And he was still, you know, a squat type of player, but he had fantastic balance, you know. And when you go past people and you get in football, you know, you was a centre half, so you was going to try and knock him off his balance.
Yeah.
If you got great balance, that's another tool in your armoury. So it's another key ingredient to look for, in my opinion. Sorry, Mark. But going back to the question, it's basically knowing what level you're looking for. You know, when I was at Millwall looking at kids, I wasn't looking at kids to play in Division 1 or when we was in the championships. I was looking players that had the potential to play in the Premier League, because if they fell short, then they would get in Millwall's championship side, and if they were that good, Millwall would sell them and make a lot of money, and you know, progress that way. So the coordinates are all the same.
Coming on to, obviously, you're now role at Kim Partners, and we talked offline before about how the Messi family come to you and they get sent various videos and things like that. Obviously, Messi's balance is ridiculous, the way he stays in the ball and can turn on a pirouette, get knocked by about 5 different people and still be on the ball. Is this I'm guessing that's the kind of things they get sent, kids with young balance and
yeah,
speed.
Yeah. To be fair, they get sent all types of players, and obviously, you know, if you're looking at a centre half and a winger, it's completely different. So you have to be specific what they are. I mean, the amount of players that I've scouted that are centre forwards or wingers, and I've scouted them and said, "Well, you're not a centre forward, but you're going to play here or you're going to play there." And at first they don't like it, because years ago everyone wanted to be centre forward, especially professionally, because that's where the money was.
Yeah.
Probably now everyone wants to be a creative goal scorer, midfield player, because, you know, you're more of a star in that role these days. You know, years ago, not many teams played with one up front, so it's harder for the centre forwards. And not many played 3 up front with basically 2 attacking wingers. So it's all different. But yeah, it's specific of what position they play and what standard they are. The Messi family are probably looking for greatness, you know. So once we saw Atsu Fati, we just thought, my God, this kid could be anything. Another one, tough story, come from Guinea-Bissau to Spain, had no money, desire. But when you see the boy play, balance, goes past people, you know, something special. So the Messi family are basically looking for something special. And like we got Gundogan, and Gundogan's agent is his brother. He's in our group, you know, he's our player. But he's more a technical, not catch the eye player. He's your unsung hero that you probably think, oh, he's a good player, but, you know, what does he really do? And then he's not there and it all falls apart.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah. Unless you're in a professional game, you can't appreciate that enough, can you?
Yeah.
And I had experience in a professional game that everyone looks at these players and kind of doesn't see the value in them. But then you think, well, why has Pep Guardiola got him in your team?
Exactly.
Bernard Mendy, everyone's talks about the risks he has, but he's still in that team week in, week out, and demands massive transfer fees.
Well, the thing is, I saw Mendy when he was 14, and he was pretty similar to what he is now. He was like absolutely flying machine, just used to knock people over. Defending was a little bit iffy, but he was so good going forward that you forgave him. So somebody like Pep it'll be very specific how he can fit into that pattern. You know, it's like the young boy Foden. I know he's done brilliant, and now he's sort of established himself. But Pep, everyone's going, oh, he's got to leave because he's never going to get a game. But he's putting them in at the right times. You know yourself, when you've seen young players look really good and they get thrown in too early, it can kill them, can't it?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, there's the politics of football involved as well. When a manager wants to save himself and make himself look good, and he puts some youngsters in to make a point to the chairman, and it's detrimental to the development of the kids' long-term careers. So there's so many elements to it. When is the right time to play youngsters?
Yeah. Or you get the other scenario is when a manager thinks, well, I'm only going to be here a couple of years. If I keep winning with a strong side, older players, if I take a chance on a kid, we might lose a few and I'll get the sack. So it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we've got another question here because we've gone well over time. Sorry, mate.
No worries.
Obviously having a great chat. So with scouting, someone said that they hear the older kids and the young man gets scouted, the hungrier they get. So so when they're younger, I noticed they're not like drones, but a lot of players are very similar because they're going through all this kind of ball mastery stuff, almost like overdose to ball mastery when they're younger. Players look unbelievable on the ball nowadays, much better than they were ever in my day, it seems, from up to the age of like 8, 9, 10. And then the game starts changing. And some of these technical players kind of fall out and go, how do you kind of view that? Because I'm sure you watch more football than I do, so you've seen it countless times. How do you feel the development of ball mastery and technical players is to the actual reality of the game when it gets 14, 15, 16s?
I think now kids are coached at a lot earlier age, right? Which is in a way a good thing if they're with like yourself and somebody who knows what they're doing. But you know, and I know, there's a lot of people who've got coaching schools that have never played, read it out of a book, and don't really understand what they're reading. So, in my opinion, a good coach can take you forward, and a bad coach can take you backwards. On the point you're making, people's first touch and their passing and the way they strike the ball's better. But I disagree a little bit. I think there's not as much flair in the game. I think some of the academies basically kill the flair of a player because we're getting so many foreign players. I'm really old, so you youngsters listening to this probably won't know, but years ago, we had players all the time that could beat people. There's not many people beating players now in football because it's coached out of them. They're coached to... If you go to an academy game, I can basically tell you where they're going to pass the ball. You know, their passes. They think they're playing a lot of football because they put lots of passes across the back, right? Because that's how continental teams do it. But continental teams do slow the game and then put pace into it. What we've got the suck of is just keeping the ball and going nowhere. So, in a way, I agree with you. Yeah, the basics, a lot of the basics are still good. But if you speak to a lot of under 18 managers, under 21 managers, and first team managers, they will say a lot of the kids don't know the basics of the game because they do so many passing drills. They don't. Yeah, defending's gone at me. I watched Spurs last night.
I'm a centre back, so I can resonate with that, mate. You know that.
Yeah. Well, they're ball watching. First rule when you're a kid is one eye on the ball, one eye on the man. I saw Tottenham's goal last night. Poor bloke's in the 6-yard box. No one's even marking him. So a lot of the basics are gone. A lot of the passing drills. The problem with the academies is as well, is you'll get a lot of coaches, money. There's money in football, but it doesn't always filter down to the coaching. Some of the coaches are there because they're on a full-time job and it's not enough to pay their mortgage. So they don't get the best players. If they got players like yourself, you're not working in an academy. You should be working in an academy, but you probably couldn't afford to because you need to pay your mortgage. So don't get me wrong, there's still loads of great coaches out there. I'm not dissing everyone, but I'm just saying. When you go to Holland, Frank de Boer, I was with Frank de Boer. Frank de Boer, Steve, come with me. I was at Liverpool. I was over there watching Ajax because at the time, well, they still are, probably renowned as one of the best academies out there. So I was sent there to see how they done it. Now, if I said to a top English player who just finished, go and do the under-9s, they would absolutely, not have it. They'd be roused. Now, Frank de Boer, being a world superstar, take the under-9s. Oh, no, you can take the 16s. No, I want to do the under-9s. And the reason he want to do the under-9s is because he can teach, he can put into them the habits and how good they can be. Once a kid's got to 17 or 18, it's very hard to change their habits. So for me, for English football to catch up again, they need to get some of the top people with the younger groups. That's just my opinion. Yeah, there'll be a lot of people screaming at it, saying, "No, that's rubbish." But my opinion is, why have we got so many continental players? Because unfortunately, English players lack flair. I was talking about Raheem Sterling earlier. Raheem Sterling does things off the cuff.
It's very hard to defend against.
Yeah, because look, you're a centre half, the one place you don't want it is not behind you, because the kid might be faster than you and trickier. You want everything in front. Yeah, you want everything in front of you that makes your job easy. And if you go to loads of academies, 16s, 18s, everything's played in front. England used to have wingers galore. I spoke to Chris Waddle. Chris Waddle's mates of David Hurst, who works with us. Now, David Hurst, a lot of your viewers won't know, but he was a great England centre forward before Shearer, hardest shot in football. Now, Waddle and him as mates, and they say they probably wouldn't even play this era because Waddle worked in a pie factory or whatever factory it was, and he done things off the cuff.
Yeah.
In academies now, he probably wouldn't be able to do that.
No, 100%. 100%. I agree.
But in Spain, in certain clubs in Spain, and not so much in Italy. Italy's very rigid. It's all defensive. But Portugal, most of the wingers that come out are from Portugal because they're allowed to express themselves. And number two, that type of thing. We're a bit staid, aren't we? I know it's changing a bit. We've got a few players that are doing it, but we're not got enough, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, thanks for that, Steve. Perfect. I've dragged Steve a little bit over time here. So, in summary, mate, what would you be your kind of words of wisdom for any aspiring kids? It might be, like we talked about, from the age of 6 to 16. We talked about your kind of 7s and stuff like that. But what, from all your years' experience working with the various different levels, what would you really be your 3 tips?
My 3 tips are: make sure you can kick with the other foot, because kids are so one-footed these days. It opens the game up so much if you're proficient with both feet. Tip is, don't be put off. There's going to be loads of people to tell you can't do that. Throw it in the bin. Go for it. Time will tell if you're good enough. but if you don't give it your best shot, you're never going to know.
Yeah.
And three is enjoy it. I don't think a lot of young players now enjoy it, especially at academies. It becomes a chore. You know, kids go in at 7, 8s and 9s. In my opinion, some of that's too early. I think they need to enjoy their self, learn to express themselves with the ball. I think it's better to get good coaching and go into academies when you're 14. And that's for a man who's worked in it for 30 years.
Yes, the age I entered, 13. Our manager wouldn't let us go to the academies before, and then when that point came, 5 or 6 of us all went to different various academies, and the rest was history.
Yeah. Well, you just think if you're going in at 8 years old and you know, you're not going to get a professional contract till you're 17, that's a long time for ups and downs. And right, I'll go to Sunday matches and a goal's scored and they go absolutely berserk. Go and watch a professional academy and they win 6-0 or they lose 6-0. They come off the same. It don't mean nothing. And you've got to have a will to win if you're going to succeed. You've not going to want to lose. You've not going to want to be second best. You've got to go for it at all times. But you've got to enjoy it as well. Because if you don't enjoy it, it then becomes a job.
Perfect, mate. Perfect. Steve, it's been a pleasure to speak to you and keep you here for longer than possible. I'll chat with you all day, mate, because that's why we love football. So we love different opinions. It's what everyone loves about it, and have this positive discussion. So thanks a lot, mate, for taking the time from my academy members. And I'm sure we'll catch up very soon.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, Steve. Thanks, mate.
Appreciate the call. Cheers. Bye.
Bye, mate.